finally, I'm going to finish this book. Just got a few pages to go. I'm sorry for the long absence, whoever's watching and whoever's listening. I've just been so overwhelmed and busy, and I really want to start getting on myself, and you need to start kind of getting motivated, because there's just a few more things I want to share reading on here that I think is essential, whether I have a big viewership or not. A big viewership, it's me contributing, because I think that really while we still have a lot of dumbasses that are asleep, we have a lot of people waking up, actually. Matter of fact, I was surprised, and I hope this goes well. I mean, I've had sometimes where some people have looked stuff up and then they just kind of go back to sleep, or they just whatever. But I was talking to a coworker, because I've grown to such a point where I've tried to share a lot of the New World Order years ago, anyways, when people were still en masse asleep, and you would just get insulted, or you would get treated like crap. It wasn't until about 2015, post 2015, 2015 onward, that a lot of people began to start waking up, at least to the New World Order agenda. Maybe not all the players involved, and maybe not all the things they need to know about it, like controlled opposition, like that sort of thing. But that, I think, the important stuff regarding it. And it was still, a lot of people just weren't fully awake yet. But I'm actually kind of hope that this goes well, and this person that I talked to begins to do her own research, and begins to find out, like I did, and like whoever's listening and watching did, that it's no conspiracy theory of the Illuminati and their agenda for world government. And that's the power of, because I was talking to her about that book, The 68th Convocation of the Rose Cross Order, and I was showing her, amazing that we have these phones. I know they're not good. They're kind of a part of the agenda, right? To get us, attached to these things. But what's also good, it kind of works as a double-edged sword. I mean, it can be, good, and it could be used for good. It could be used for bad. You could use it to wake a lot of people up because it's convenient. It's right there. You don't have to bring a whole book with you, and it actually can show right on the phone. Where I showed her the book on archive.org, which you yourself can look up if you're interested in just reading it yourself. And it's from that Rosicrucian order that I've read plenty of on my previous channel. And it talks about the Illuminati, the unseen hierarchies which must someday rule the world. And I was showing her all that stuff, and she actually was surprisingly fascinated, because she told me before I journeyed with her in this conversation that she thought that, because I was talking to her about the French Revolution, because we were talking about earlier stuff like revolutions, and she was showing me stuff that I didn't really know, like Operation Condor involving Cuba in the U.S. And I started mentioning the French Revolution, and that I'm more on the conspiratorial side of research. I believe that, I always try to slowly reveal my beliefs in a safe kind of way, and not just drop it, like some people do, and come off like I'm crazy, but I try my best, because I think when you slowly slide it in, like the truth regarding, the Illuminati, people, I think I've noticed I got more positive results doing it that way. So I'm like, yeah, the French Revolution, a lot of the Jacobins, they were, they were a part of Illuminati lodges that were set up in France, part of the revolution and stuff like that. And she was like, wow, really, the Illuminati? Wow, I just thought that was an internet conspiracy theory that's not real. I went, well, I showed her on, an Adam Weishaupt, and then I showed her that book. And I thought that was going to be it, and that she was like, oh, because that was the usual response from people, and then they just kind of forget it. Not she. I actually found out, like, a few days later that she actually remembered the name of the book, looked it up on Amazon, and then purchased it herself. And I'm like, wow. Yeah, so I hope that turns out good, and I hope that it's not one of those things where, I did warn her that, to discern what you're reading when you're reading their stuff, because a lot of the times they're going to write like Manly P. Hall, and I can give you examples, books like this and stuff like that, you have to remember that they're going to try to sound like the good guys, or that they're the saviors of humanity, and that they're just trying to, save us and whatnot. So you got to read that, yes, discern it though, and read in between what they say, like, and I can give you examples, like Manly P. Hall does that too. I mean, he does expose stuff that is wrong with like the bankers and stuff like that in this book, but then he pushes, one world socialism as the answer to that. And, so I'm sorry I'm going on here. I'm already at 6 minutes. I just wanted to tell you that that's the power of having documented facts with you. That's the power. I mean, you can completely change a lot of people's minds as long as you carry 100% truth with you. No conjecture, no lies, no nothing. And that's what I did. So it may not be huge, but it's a start. Alright, so I'm on page 93 of this book here. And again, I'm reading this book to show, obviously, since this is a Masonic approved scholar on the occult and secret societies, Manly P. Hall, who was an honorary 33rd degree Mason and probably part of the Illuminati himself, I bet, but we know he was a big government socialist. That's what he pretty much is saying in these books when he writes them, that the secret societies, they were the first humanists, the first socialists to bring about a one world government, basically. Okay. All the available records bearing upon the life of this good father indicate that he was a man of the highest integrity. Prester John is who he's talking about. He further makes the simple statement that this king, whom he converted, was a Nestorian. If a Christian empire existed in Asia at an early time, it must have been under the influence of the Nestorians, if not actually founded by them. We may ask why Titurel, the Grail King, journeyed to Asia when his time came to die. Also, why did Parsifal take the Grail to the Far East at the end of his own reign? Nestorius, who flourished in the 5th century, was a victim of that same Cyril of Alexandria, responsible for the martyrdom of Hypatia, the mathematician. Cyril accused Nestorius of heresy, and he was anathematized by a synod presided over by Cyril and 159 bishops. The synod was declared invalid by the emperor because the accused bishop and his friends were never permitted a hearing. Thus, Nestorius was one of the early victims of the political machinery of the Western Church. It is believed that he was influenced by Gnosticism and the sect of Mainz. It would be quite reasonable, therefore, that if the Grail Kingdom, itself under the ban of the Church, sought refuge in a distant land, it would choose a location dominated by convictions similar to its own. The Nestorians, like the Albigensians, practiced a mystical communion and covenant outside the self-proclaimed Church of Christendom. According to the earliest authorities, the Holy Grail was not only a cup, or the sacred stone Exilus, but also was a mysterious gospel, a secret book. Eugene Erox, the Catholic writer, favors this belief. Some have gone so far as to suggest that this book was the esoteric doctrine of the Templars and contributed to the Masonic tradition. It is evident that the story of Titurel and the symbolical genealogy of the Grail Kings relate to the descent of schools or orders of initiates. Titurel represents the ancient wisdom, and like the mysterious father, CRC, that's Christian Rosenkreutz of the Rosicrucians, is the personification of the mystery schools which serve the shrine of eternal truth. In the descent, the scene is gradually shifted from Jerusalem to Rome, and then from Rome to those areas in France which were the seats of the Albigenses. Although these heretics were scattered by the crusade against them, led by the Dominicans, their power was never completely broken. At a later date, another interesting and mysterious person appeared in Provence. He too left a strange legacy of poetic quatrains and was the greatest prophet of the modern world. In the opening of his prophetic centuries, Michael Nostradamus describes himself as seated upon a tripod, like the priestess of ancient Delphi. His verses, which have never been completely interpreted, were written in the Provençal dialect. To show that a body of lore continues through the centuries, extremely difficult to trace but linked definitely with the area under consideration, let us quote a few lines from a letter dated February 12, 1787, and addressed to a Theosophical Masonic Society which met in Middle Temple, London. The letter was signed by Count Grabianca, one of the names assumed by Count Cagliostro. The letter is from the Society at Avignon, and one section reads, quote, "Yes, dear brethren, there exists a society which the Lord Jesus Christ has formed. It was in the year 1779 and in the north of Europe that he was pleased to lay the foundations thereof. Some of those who were first favored by his choice received afterward orders to go to the south. 5 of this number being reunited, expected for some time past, their very dear brother, Grabianca, etc. The rest who are dispersed in different countries earnestly expect the same order. We know already that one of them, who has nearly finished his first course, will very soon join us. The ensuing spring will bring back 15, and we expect many more brethren and sisters that we know will be called in the course of this year." Unquote. Is it not curious that Cagliostro, the Grand Cafte of the Egyptian rite of Freemasonry, should be associated with the Brotherhoods of Avignon? Is it not equally interesting that it should be generally acknowledged that the flamboyant Count was an agent of the surviving but elusive Knights Templars? To top this unusual sequence of events, it should be mentioned that the lodge which Cagliostro visited in London was dedicated to the Swedenborgian rite of Freemasonry, and that Cagliostro appeared among them claiming that the secret society in Avignon was practicing the esoteric Freemasonry of Emanuel Swedenborg. This industrious Masonic enterprise reminds us that in 1781, a lodge of Masons was established in Paris for the purpose of uniting the Illuminism of Adam Weishaupt, the Bavarian esotericist, the Illuminati, with the new mystical revelations of Swedenborg. The roster of this industrious lodge included the names of Count Cagliostro, Anton Mesmer, and the Comte de Saint-Germain. By this circumstance, Saint Germain is also shown to be profoundly involved in the Bavarian Illuminati, the Asiatic Brethren, and the secret societies of Avignon. While the tradition may be confused and obscure, it is evident that we are confronted with the descent of a secret school which existed from the beginning of the Christian era and formed an esoteric empire. This empire was known at one time as the Kingdom of the Grail, and was functioning as a political force in Europe as late as the rise of Napoleon I. Time am I at? Nearly every important transcendentalist of the last 1,000 years can be traced as being affiliated with this hidden empire. This hidden empire. This hidden empire. Research will fill in the few and inconsequential breaks in this golden chain of initiates, but the temple on the 3 peaks of Salvaterra remains hidden unless it is revealed by the will of God. Prester John, the phantom emperor of the world. In the year AD 1144, Hugo, bishop of Gabala, reported that a certain John, who governed as priest-king in an inaccessible region of the Far East, had together with his people been converted to Nestorianism. This John belonged to the race of the 3 Magi, adepts, imagining that that's talking about the Magi that visited Christ at his birth. And so extraordinary was his wealth that he carried a scepter of pure emeralds. In this way, the rumors spread about Europe that a mysterious Christian monk was the supreme ruler over the nations of Asia. From some remote fastness of the Trans-Himalaya, the power of this man extended throughout the 3 Indies. In 1165, kings and princes of Europe, including Barbarossa, received letters and long documents from the Emperor of the East. In these epistles, the writer described himself as John the Presbyter, priest of the almighty power of God and of our Lord Jesus Christ. One of these letters to his friend Manuel, Prince of Constantinople, opened with the words, quote, I, Prester John, the Lord of Lords, surpass all under heaven in virtue and riches and in power, unquote. In this document, Prester John devoted considerable space to the description of his empire. Among other curious notes, he describes monstrous ants that dug gold out of the earth, and fish from whose bodies might be extracted imperishable purple dyes. There were also pebbles which gave forth light, restored the sight of the blind, and rendered the possessor invisible. Here flowed the fountain of youth, and there was a sea of sand in which swam a strange kind of fish. Here also was the home of the salamander, a worm which lived in fire, and from whose wool were woven the incombustible garments of the king, which were washed by flames. Salamander's wool is the ancient name for asbestos. In the land of Prester John there was no poverty, no crime, and no vice. That's always the promise of the socialists and their utopias. Is there's no poverty, no crime. I mean, that's basically, you'll find the same kind of stuff talked about in John Lennon's Imagine. No more war, all peace, no poverty. Before his palace, which was splendid beyond description, was a magic mirror by which the emperor could see throughout his dominions and detect all conspiracy against the state. He was constantly waited upon by 7 kings, 60 dukes, and 365 counts. 12 archbishops sat at his right hand and 20 bishops at his left. Yet with all this grandeur he was a modest and humble man who did not rejoice in worldly splendor, and chose only to be called presbyter, even though his butler was an archbishop, his chamberlain was a bishop, and his chief cook was a king. Early travelers to the Far East brought back lurid accounts of this strange monarch, who maintained a standing army of 1.5 million warriors, and was complete master of the birthplace of the sun. It's S-U-N, the sun. Some more of that sun symbolism stuff. Even Marco Polo returned with an extravagant story of a Christian emperor of Tibet, whose colonies included Persia, Ceylon, and Siam. I think I'm pronouncing that correct, but just in case I'm not, let me spell. Ceylon, or Ceylon, whatever, is C-E-Y-L-O-N, and Siam is S-I-A-M. Okay? So those are the colonies of Marco Polo, whose powers were limitless. It is impossible to dismiss the story of Prester John as a mere fable, for legendary men do not write letters or send embassies. On the other hand, no account of this strange man is to be found in Oriental histories, which were amazingly comprehensive. Wolfram von Eschenbach was the most important of the medieval German poets and was a minnesinger. In his epic poem, Parsifal, he conducted for the first time the legend of the Holy Grail, and with the history of Prester John. Parsifal, the mythical king of the Holy Grail, carried the sacred cup to Asia, where he received the name of Prester John. Thus we see the secret orders of Europe were involved in the perpetuation of the curious fable of the Asiatic Lord of Lords. After the era of exploration, by which the boundaries and proportions of countries came to be known with greater accuracy, the location of Prester John's empire shifted from one inaccessible area to another, and finally was identified with Abyssinia. At the beginning of the 15th century, the Abyssinian Christian priests described their kingdom as the land of Prester John. This story gained immediate popularity, and the princes of Europe sent ambassadors in search of him. Unfortunately, these men were never heard of again. The Negus of Abyssinia combined in his person certain temporal and spiritual powers, and the name of John occurs frequently in the list of the Abyssinian kings. This entire theory, however, was finally abandoned. The oldest map on which America is mentioned, dated 1507, placed the country of John the Presbyter in the area of Tibet. The following description appeared, quote, "This is the land of the good king and lord, known as Prester John, lord of all eastern and southern India, lord of all the kings of India, in whose mountains are found all kinds of precious stones," unquote. In the first 100 years after the invention of printing, several books were published showing pictures of Prester John in his royal robes. Because of the lack of geographical data, many believed the boundaries of Abyssinia to extend to China. In fact, the discovery of the Cape of Good Hope was due principally to the efforts of the King of Portugal to communicate with Prester John. The long sad story of the search for the Phantom Emperor can be studied at length in The Land of Prester John, a chronicle of Portuguese exploration by Elaine Sancho. Most writers who have examined the tradition about Prester John have overlooked the one source from which they might have secured the real key to the mystery. Heckthorn was working in the right direction when he pointed out that the legend originated in the resemblance between Buddhism and Christianity. He explains that there was in China in the 12th century a great Mongol tribe professing Buddhism, which by travelers was mistaken for an Oriental Christian religion. The Nestorian Christians dwelling among the Mongols called the head of the Buddhist sect John the Priest, and hence arose the tradition that in the heart of Asia there was a Christian church whose pope bore the title of Prester John. The original location given for the empire of Prester John was the area of the Gobi Desert, where he lived in an enchanted palace in the mountains. If you ask Eastern initiates to describe the northern paradise called Dijung or Shambhala, although Lucis Trust talks about that place, the mysterious city of the adepts, they will tell you that it is in the heart of the Gobi Desert. In the old sand of Shamo, the ancient mother, stands the temple of the invisible government of the world. The invisible government of the world. High in the etheric atmosphere of the planet it floats, supported upon an outcropping of azoic rock called the Sacred or Imperishable Island. Now remember, all this is esoteric. All this, Shambhala and it being in the heart of the Gobi Desert and the old sand of Shamo, where the invisible government of the world stands, high in the etheric atmosphere, whatever. All that's esoteric. It's really the hidden school, hidden mystery school of the adepts, the 1,000 points of light. And my previous channel, I actually read from the Rosicrucian, one of the Rosicrucian websites, their articles on that, where they admit that that's what they're talking about regarding the Great White Brotherhood that the Theosophists and New Agers talked about. It's all esoteric, mumbo jumbo, referring to the hidden elite masters, as they like to call themselves, more like the hidden elite. Deceiving snakes, many of them. The fabled Mahatmas of Asia should not be regarded as isolated initiates, but as members of an exalted fraternity, which has been called the Trans-Himalayan Brotherhood. This order of exalted men, servants of the Lord of the world, are the spiritual governors of the mundane sphere. Now, I went over, like the Alice Bailey writings, that the Lord of the world, and who is that? That's Sanat Chimera, and who's Sanat Chimera, you'll find out. It's basically Satan, or Lucifer, the one that gave, they believe was the one that was the Prometheus, basically, that gave, knowledge to humankind to, quicken the evolution of the species, whatever, that's what they believe. They gather at prescribed intervals in the temple of Shambhala on the sacred islands. They give allegiance to the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, Regent of the Sun, that's not S-O-N, that's S-U-N, and Master of the world. That we are dealing with the cosmic myth and a story of the esoteric schools is evident when we remember the 7 kings, planets, 12 archbishops, signs of the zodiac, and 365 counts, days of the year, and other obviously symbolical numbers. Eskenbach realizes for the Order of the Holy Grail, with its temple and its knights, is only a veiled reference to Shambhala. It seems that the invisible government was involved in the crisis caused by the rise of Genghis Khan. It never occurred to the Christian historians that the sacred city of the gods could be anything except an Asiatic version of Rome. Beneath the name and legend of Prester John is concealed the identity of the unknown and unnamed 13th and highest adept of the philosophic empire. Naturally, he could not be found, but the Golden City, and that's also the gold is also a esoteric reference to the sun, S-U-N too. And, the Golden Age, and who is the god of the Golden Age, according to them? Saturn. Saturn and Satan, and all that other stuff. Yeah, I'm sure you guys, viewers, already kind of know that stuff. But naturally, he cannot be found. But the golden city sought by the Portuguese is the same abode of the godmen, that Lao Tse was seeking when he departed alone into the sand of Shammel, riding on his green ox. And that does it for this book. Well, and I love to continuously remind people, even though it's maybe every other video, I'm putting them down in the comment section, the quotes from these guys. I just want, in case there's Manly P. Hall defenders out there that say, well, he wasn't for that. Let me remind you, in this book here, he pushes for big government control of everything, and not only that, but on page 135, he says this, quote, "The next inevitable step in human progress is to bind the nations of the world to one superstate. By doing so, the security and progress of the race would be assured." Okay? Mark down there. See, that's the power of documented fact. And Masonic approved occult scholar here, who spoke at Masonic lodges all the time and was given the honorary 33rd degree. And also he devotes a whole chapter to the international nation. And again, you have to discern when you're reading this stuff, because of course he is going to because a lot of these guys are in their minds, some of them think that they're the good guys. Some of them think that they're the saviors of the world, and that they're doing this for our own good, and that for the security of the race, whatnot. But listen to this, too, that his economic plan is as he would like to see. Anyways. "It would be perfectly natural and proper for the United States of America to lead by example in the next great step in civilization, the fraternizing of nations," fraternizing, eternal, "into one economic and industrial combine, one world currency, one world economic system. This should be based upon," now remember studies on socialism, "this should be based upon cooperation rather than profit." Okay, and again, that's their Lucis Trust vision of our world. That's the Agenda 21. That's the, yeah. And right here, of course, too. I'll just let you read that. The international nation once created. So don't give me that shit, you people who want to come on here, and whoever does. Majority of you guys are obviously not, but don't give me that shit, that bullshit, that it's just conspiracy theories that are made up, that Masons don't want a one world government. Sorry, and as time progresses, people are waking up. People are waking up a lot. And sooner or later, and I hope, sooner or later, these guys are going to be in big trouble. Sooner or later, I do hope for that. And then all this documentation from their own words, and, from, Klaus Schwab's of the world, all part of the Brotherhood, all their psychological warfare really just blows up in their face. And I would love to be there and see really a true, like, Nuremberg 2 on these people, and just watch their faces as their doom is practically spelled out. Alrighty, take care.